And hello, everyone, and welcome to the Copyright 2.0 show, episode number 366. It is 66, right? I didn't drop an episode, did I? Yes, 66. My name is Jonathan Bailey, and I'm from the website Plagiarism Today, which can be found at plagiarismtoday.com. And joining me, as usual, the man who gives love a bad name, attorney Evan Sherez, who is not here to dole legal advice, but he is here for our entertainment and our informational pursuits. Evan, how are you doing?
I'm doing okay. So where did that Bon Jovi reference come
I have
from?
no idea. It's just I have a friend of mine who absolutely hates Bon Jovi, so I feel compelled to throw Bon Jovi references out every chance I get.
How dare he hate Bon Jovi?
Huh? How dare she hate Bon Jovi?
How dare she?
I know. I agree. She lumped him with Nickelback.
Oof.
Nickelback.
Come on now.
That's unfair.
Well,
But anyways, Evan, how are you doing? You're looking, and Evan, for those of you listening to the audio, you're missing out. Evan is looking downright spiffy today.
yes, I do have an event to go to after we tape. I'm doing well. I'm back from Canada.
No, we're all disappointed about that.
Yeah,
no more international
no more international shows, no. And you know what? I'm just ready to talk some copyright with you and with our listeners, should they choose to send us a question over Twitter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm ready to jump right into it. So
yeah. And you've got our Twitter handles on the video chat, so feel free to tweet your questions to us. Probably the easiest way, as we have yet to master the art of Google Plus video chat, but it's okay. We will eventually get there. I promise you. We are intelligent adults, and I assume Google would not create anything that has poor customer support, right? Right.
Of course not.
Of course not.
So,
all right,
John, why don't you jump into the stories we're going to be talking about this week?
Yeah, we got a lot of great stories this week. A surprising turn of events in a Shakira plagiarism lawsuit. This one really kind of confuses me, and I'm kind of excited to see what you have to say. Update or two on the MPAA case against MovieTube, and a further update on the case between Michelle Phan and the record label Ultra Records. A hosting company wanting to wipe some 1,100 plus Megaupload servers that it still has active and all the data on, apparently. Dallas Buyers Club LLC suffers a setback in Australia. But in the UK, police are reporting some striking success in reducing ad spending on piracy sites. Finally, we have two stories of, I guess, making lemons of lemonade when you're dealing with piracy and copyright infringement. First is a woman in Leeds in the UK who is shocked, I say, to find T-shirts with her face on it being sold at a local store, and a mobile game makers decide to turn the tables on pirates, if you will, with a little feature in the game for those who download it illegally. So we have a lot to go over this week. So starting with Shakira?
Starting with Shakira, and if you'd give me a second here, John.
No problem. I'd forgotten how catchy that hook is.
It's a hook, all right. So
it is a hook and a quarter there. Wow.
Yeah, you know.
Now I know what's going to be in the background of my brain for the next hour. Thank you, Evan.
You're very welcome. And for those of you who are not watching video, you did miss John and I dancing for just a few seconds. So
for a brief moment. I apologize.
That is Shakira's multi-platinum Loca, which sold 5 million copies, which was allegedly plagiarized. A gentleman by the name of Arius claimed that he wrote a tune, which he registered in '98, I believe. Or no, sorry, it was registered later on, but as he claimed, was created in 1998. He claimed that basically, like, you stole my song, and he sued, and he won. Now, some last-minute evidence came forth.
Yeah, and to be clear where we were, the judge had ruled infringement had taken place. We were getting to the damages phase of stuff. Mm-hmm. We were starting to talk money. And then, yeah, evidence came up, and I'm unclear on this part. What evidence did come up?
So the evidence that came up, John, was that the actual tape, which the plaintiffs claimed was the song. This is the music. This is what we released. This is the package. This was the album. The photo, this is part of it. The photo of the person who was on the cover as an adult was claimed to be a third party, and this guy would have been, he was born in the 80s, late 80s, so he would have been only 8 or 9 years old at the time of the release, of the alleged release of this tape, but he was an adult on the picture. So it was clearly released like 10 years later. So there was no way it could have been released in 1998 with as packaged, because the person depicted on it.
And of course,
that means time travel.
They falsified evidence on their copyright registration, which means the registration is null and void, which means no case, goodbye.
Right, at least for right now. So as you correctly pointed out, that a copyright registration can be canceled, can be voided due to fraudulent misinformation, fraudulent misrepresentations, and you need a copyright registration in order to sue in federal court.
It's like a jurisdictional issue, which is kind of bizarre, but, you know, this is the United States. What do you expect?
Yeah, and so this guy was licking his chops. You know, seemed to have gotten away with murder, and it turns out that he was all right.
Yeah, and it's very, very rare for this type of thing to happen in courts, these types of turnarounds, especially this late in the game. And the question immediately raises, how did they not spot this like years ago when this case started?
You know, if the whole case, or if the entirety of the new evidence, which isn't clear yet, is just this guy, can you imagine the associate, you know, thinking like, you know what, we've tried everything, but who is this guy on this box?
Yeah, who is this dude? Let's Google him.
Let me look at it claims to be, you know, John Smith. Let me look up John Smith. Wait, the John Smith that they claim to be was only born in. This is, you know, like it all clicks. The light bulb goes on, and it's like.
And you can imagine this associate running down the hall of the law firm,
yeah, exactly,
screaming, waving his new evidence as he goes.
Mm-hmm.
Eureka!
Eureka, indeed.
So yeah, this type of stuff does not happen very often, and it's very, very rare, especially in copyright. Because usually with copyright, most of your evidence is pretty well laid out early in the process. You don't have a lot of evolving evidence as you go type thing. So this is pretty interesting. But yeah, and it reminds me a little bit of the Shepard Fairey case, where Shepard Fairey, the street artist, was battling with the Associated Press. Fairey made his Obama Hope poster based upon a photo owned by the Associated Press.
Okay.
And the issue was, okay, he did it, but was it fair use? Legit question, right? We got some legit issues here. And so they were battling back and forth, but then it was revealed that Fairey lied about what photo he had used.
Hmm.
And the photo he'd used, he claimed, was one where like Obama was only a tiny part of the photo, but he'd actually used a close-up shot of Obama. And mind you, that didn't really drastically change the fair use questions, but here he'd falsified evidence in the court. His attorney dropped him. His whole case fell apart. You know, it's all about, you're much better off being on the up and up and presenting a weak case than falsifying a stronger one at all times.
Well, absolutely. You know, when you lose credibility before the court, you're in big trouble. And if your lawyer abandons you because you're not being truthful with him, which he has a right to do, you know, it takes a lot for a lawyer to be able to drop his client mid-trial. You've got a very strong ethical responsibilities towards his client. But, you know, when a client isn't being truthful with you, you end up making misrepresentations to the court. And, you know, that's not something a lawyer wants to be doing. So it definitely gives him grounds to lose his client under some conditions. And if that was the case, you know, it's a big problem for him. And
it's a strange coincidence. I actually knew the attorney involved in that. Anthony Falzone was the attorney. I met him at a conference in the Netherlands once upon a time. We communicated a few times since. But yeah, he's a great stand-up dude. He believes strongly in the case, and I can imagine it was a deep personal, you know, decision to back away from it at that moment. I can only I did not speak to him after it happened, but I can easily, knowing his personality, imagine how conflicted he was.
His name was Anthony Falzone.
Falzone, F-A.
Okay, I was going to say.
No.
He's
not named after a wonderful, wonderful Italian dish. He is an excellent attorney. He's from the Center for Internet and Society, actually, currently at Stanford University. So,
Very nice. All right, well, let's move on to the MovieTube case. We talked about this.
Yeah, we talked about this previously, and this one's interesting because you have this group of sites called MovieTube, and they apparently operated something like 24 different domains, and they were basically a very complicated and involved movie and TV show streaming operation. Nothing much else to say about it. And the movie studios, as one might expect, sued them. So far, all boring and uninteresting. But the MPAA, in their request, made sort of a petition for injunction and went a bit above and beyond what you normally expect in this case. Normally, you expect an injunction to cease, the infringement and all that. But they also wanted an injunction that would have barred anybody in the United States from pretty much ever doing business with these sites, including ad providers, caching providers, hosting providers, you name it, would have barred them.
Yeah, this definitely jumped out at me last week. I don't know if I brought up that it jumped out at me last week, but my first instinct was like, they can't do that. But I didn't really get the chance to dive into it in more depth, and that's what this amicus brief really goes into. As you mentioned, part of the relief requested was an injunction, which was asking basically all others, asking the court to order others to stop linking to the site, etc. So Google and their Google and company, the usual suspects on that side who usually band together for amicus briefs, Yahoo's, Google's, Amazon's, they're like, hey, what the hell? What about our basic due process? How can an injunction be issued against us? We're not even, a named party. The law is here. This is, and if you go to basic civil procedure, it says that, in order for us to be subject to this injunction, it either has to be us as one of the parties who are named, or we have to be an agent or a subsidiary of the companies that are named in the lawsuit, or we have to, quote, actively participate in the party's violations, none of which is happening. So they make this very important due process and civil procedure argument, which is that, this proposed preliminary injunction is, quote, breathtakingly broad, and we have basic due process rights that need to be honored. Not only that, but they say that, even apart from the due process issue, there's a way to get ISPs to stop doing something, and that's why we have the DMCA. There's a whole process for this. There are procedural and substantive conditions that need to be met in order for an ISP to be subject to an injunction. We've talked about this many times before, the whole safe harbor concept. So, their argument was twofold. Yeah. I think that, these are very, very strong arguments. The studios did make a few arguments as to why they thought the due process was respected. They had mentioned two previous cases in which parties were subject to an injunction if they weren't the named defendant, but
such as the quote unquote groove one of the Groove Shark cases involving Cloudflare.
Right, but in those cases you have this direct privity of contract. I don't know if that was the Cloudflare where the court said it was direct privity, but the companies end up being much more directly involved. Yeah,
and like then that process, like Cloudflare, the registration of an account, the contract binding between the two parties, etc. Yeah, it's different than with like Google, for example, who just simply index the site.
Right now, Copy Hype, Terry Hart over at the Copyright Alliance has a great blog called Copy Hype, and he forwarded his write-up my way on the issue, which is that, at least for the due process challenge, that the courts in the past have said that this is not a due process violation because once the injunction is issued against you, when you are sued for being in contempt of that injunction, you can make the court
provides remedies.
Basically allows you to challenge your status as a quote active participant, which is the standard for whether you're subject to the injunction for in the civil procedure part of the argument that I had explained earlier. So under that, logic, there's really no due process violation here. But, in my opinion, it's really not very smart judicial policy to issue injunctions and have ISPs and other people risk or basically make them ignore an injunction. That's a huge deal to ignore an injunction. Contempt penalties are massive, and some contempt penalties are criminal.
They rack up like daily. I mean,
so to force a company to choose between shutting down their services or alternatively being in contempt and then challenging something on the merits during a proceeding, where someone's going to argue that you are in contempt, I don't think that's smart policy. I really don't, and I'm curious to see where the court ends up coming down here, because the amicus brief made by Google here is like, hey, this is a huge deal, just to make us subject to an injunction over people that we have no active participation with is just bad.
Yeah.
And, I'm a pretty copyright guy, but I think in this case they may have an argument here.
And the thing about it is, there were certain parties they were requesting injunction to that were not very controversial, I think. Any hosting providers, et cetera. Those are, like I said, active participation. That's where you reach the point of active participation, when you got a contract, an agreement between the two parties. You've got that active participation. So hosting providers, caching providers like Cloudflare, any advertisers, I think there's not much controversy there.
Agreed.
But when you start getting into search engines and these people that really have nothing to do with the site other than they indexed it along with trillions of other pages.
Yeah, I'm curious why they haven't filed to enter the lawsuit as, an interested party here. There's a procedure to do that.
Yeah. It's an interesting. All this is an interesting argument, but unfortunately, as per an update that came out yesterday and today, it's also kind of moot right now, because the MPAA has ended up dropping this injunction because MovieTube shut down almost immediately after the lawsuit was filed. All the sites went down. There's really no injunction argument to be heard now. They've enjoined themselves.
Right, the concept of mootness,
and we're enjoying.
If there are no real injuries left to settle, then a judge can't just issue an opinion based on the principles of law that were before it if there's no real issue at stake. There's a few exceptions to that, but they're not really that relevant to copyright law. And I think that brings us maybe to our next story here.
And the one thing that the add real quick though is that they are still pursuing a permanent injunction, but that is of course more of a formality at this point.
Against MovieTube, or are they pursuing a permanent injunction against everybody? That would be very different.
Yeah, that's true. But they're most like I don't know. They did not specify in the article I read, and the two articles I read about who they're seeking a permanent injunction from or against. But but it doesn't. It looks like this case is fizzling out just because the site's gone, and there's not much really to be gained or gleaned here. Well,
okay. Well,
Michelle. This takes us to the next one though, and Michelle Phan. Makeup artist and YouTube star, and this is like the incredible thing about YouTube. A woman who is very good with makeup can literally get millions of followers on YouTube and make crazy bank at it. That's insane to me. Yeah. I don't know why. Makeup is a very, very amazing art, and believe me, I say that both as an appreciator of all arts and also as a haunted house guy, a haunter and movie aficionado that appreciates the work that goes into it. But
of course.
Anyways, she has a YouTube channel that's very, very popular. And like many YouTubers, she uses background music. And apparently some of that background music came from artists such as Cascade, Deadmau5, and other dubstep artists from Ultra Records. And
the process in which she was able to first use Cascade's music is extremely important here. And this is a very, very important lesson for agents, for representatives of musicians of all kinds, even for lawyers, which is that sometimes without really knowing you're doing it, you're agreeing to a very long-term license, and when you don't imply that there's a length or a certain way that the license expires or a certain methodology for you to end a contract, then you end up in trouble like Cascades people are in trouble here. Maybe in trouble is the wrong word, maybe unable to really capitalize as in this situation. So proceed. Well, what's happened since?
Well, the original lawsuit was filed in July 2014. And then Michelle Phan actually filed a counter lawsuit sometime thereafter, sometime later that year. And she claimed that she had gotten permission from various promotional agents at Ultra Records to use the music. And basically, she claimed she had a license to use it so long as she gave links to iTunes,
right?
downloads.
So they had emailed back and forth.
Yeah.
And she was like, hey, I'd love to be able to use his music. And then the Cascades representative says, quote, we're more than happy to let you, Michelle Phan, use the content. And then she says, okay, great, I'm going to link, or she had originally said, great, can I use it? I'll link to your material. I'll give you credit for the material. And they're like, sure, we're more than happy to let you. So in her mind, a contract is made.
Mm-hmm.
In order for her services of linking to the music and bringing
and it's
exposure
not
to
an unreasonable way to think about it either.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Especially since you got it in writing.
Yep. And so, things went on smoothly until all of a sudden the takedown notices are sent. Yeah. And she's like, hey, wait, no, we have a contract. I'm allowed to use this. You've been letting me use it for years. And so, it brings up the question, John, is that if you have an agreement with someone, or at least an implied agreement that doesn't have an end date, can you just send a takedown notice when you feel like you're done giving this person a license? And I think the answer to that is no.
No.
There's obviously going to be some sort of notice requirement. And in this case, since they didn't specify it, it ends up, in my opinion, end up being a reasonable notice, which may not have been given in this case.
Yeah. And Phan, on her side, claims she was being damaged by all of these notices against her account, harming her ability to monetize her videos and possibly putting her account in danger of being closed because of the YouTube strike system.
That's right.
So she had her own damages issue here, but they've all kissed and made up.
As is tradition.
And they all seem to be besties, BFFs forever, and are moving forward with whatever new arrangement they have reached as part of their settlement.
Silly lawsuit. There's no real damage to Cascade with Michelle Phan using his music, as long as she's giving a half reasonable royalty, which I'm sure that they have come to. And this whole thing could have avoided if they had said, hey, we had this agreement, worked for us for a while, but we never really talked about terms. So our intention is to have this agreement between us expire in 3 months, and if you'd like, we can arrange a reasonable licensing fee for you to continue, and which I think would have probably been responded to rather favorably by her.
Yeah. It does not sound like Phan was being unreasonable at any point in this. She understands the value of music. She's not some random YouTuber who's jacked a copy of Let the Bodies Hit the Floor for his Call of Duty montage. She's very savvy about these things, is the impression I've gotten. Reading articles about her and reading interviews from her. So, yeah, she's not she's smarter than your average YouTuber, eh, boo-boo? Well, okay, let's play a game here. You own a web hosting company, and one of your biggest clients, someone who has over 1,000 servers with you, suddenly gets shuttered by the federal government. That's a bad day for business right there.
It's a real bad day for business.
But even worse, the federal government steps in and says, hey, by the way, we need you to maintain and preserve those servers while this case is ongoing. It's evidence. It's evidence. It's pretty flatly evidence.
So you pay for it, federal government?
Yeah. Like, that's not expensive, is what you're going to say.
Yeah.
And basically, oh, and by the way, this case, thanks to extradition and other stuff, it's going to drag on for way more than 3 years.
Right.
So that's exactly pretty much what happened to Carpathia Hosting, who has sat on 1,103 servers that they have maintained in storage, unable to do anything with because of the ongoing case against Kim.com and the others behind Megaupload. But now that the company has been purchased by QTS, which just sounds like a bad Scrabble hand to me, Basically, they are petitioning the court a second time saying, hey, look, it's been over 3 years. You haven't done anything with them. It's costing us $9,000 a day. Can we please erase these servers and do something else with them now?
Yeah, that seems like a reasonable request to me.
It does.
You know, from what I've read, Megaupload server hosts in Europe were allowed to delete their files. And, you know, it seems pretty reasonable to me that the federal government should be paying to have these servers stored if they're the ones who require it. You know,
well, and the other alternative they give is, I think, a reasonable one, saying, hey, how about this? We'll move the data somewhere else. We'll put in like Amazon cloud servers somewhere it's way cheaper there, rather than us having to hold all of these servers. Because remember, servers are a lot more than just a hard drive. It's, you know, RAM and processors and stuff. It's
hardware, electric costs, you know, maintenance of the actual building in which the servers are stored.
Yeah, it's crazy expensive. And if all they want's the data, just move the data.
That's right.
Get the data somewhere else, and that'll probably be much, much cheaper for everyone. So yeah, I think it's a perfectly reasonable request. But Kim.com and others are concerned that, hey, thousands of users may lose their data forever, to which I say they've already lost it for 3.5+ years.
Yeah. Is there also like episodes of The Big Bang Theory as part of this data? Like, how much viewership do they really think they're going to get, you know, in the extremely unlikely situation in which it's eventually released to them? What are they really after here? The old emails, the old accounts information, or is it the actual content that they really want to keep? You know, if I was them, I'd let the evidence be destroyed.
Yeah, I say let it go, because I'm almost 1,000% certain that the government has already backed up repeatedly what they consider to be the most important evidence. They're already battling in New Zealand. They're already battling here in the U.S. They've got the evidence that they want. And if they haven't gone back to these servers in 3 years, it's like, I feel like it's my mom telling me, if you haven't worn that jacket in 2 years, you need to donate it. That's what I feel. I can almost hear her, you know. Hi, Mom.
Yeah, I'm reading here that all their information from their European servers are gone. The U.S. government has its most important information. I mean, I'm going to try and actually find this motion to see what the standard is, because I'm certainly no evidentiary preservation expert. This is actually a very niche area of the law, and so I'm curious to see how this plays out. Anyways,
yeah, it's gonna be.
I'll try to get back to you guys on that.
All right. Well, speaking of down under, it looks like we're Dallas Buyers Club in Australia suffers what can only be described as a pretty nasty setback. Now, their MO for the longest time has basically been, you know, they will file these lawsuits against John Doe defendants, hope to get ISPs to turn over the relevant information, then basically close the lawsuits and move on to trying and contacting these individuals directly and getting these relatively small but still profitable settlements for infringement of the movie The Dallas Buyers Club, predictably enough.
Yeah. Doesn't this remind you a little bit of the people who were scolded in Michigan for doing the same thing with pornography?
Yep. You're thinking Malibu Media, yes.
Yeah. You know, this is the strategy that a lot of music and movie industry people were advocating like 10 or 15 years ago. But I thought the sue your client was the kind of strategy that was abandoned a long time ago.
Well, it was, and this is one of the interesting things. The RIAA pursued the strategy famously shortly after the Napster craze.
Right.
But their pattern, their MO was quite different. They would actually sue an individual as a John Doe, then get the identity, and then pursue that lawsuit.
Right.
Which is perfectly fine and legal. That's not in any way unusual or shocking.
And not what these people are doing, which is sending out these...
Hey, we're going to sue 100, 20, 100, 1,000, whatever people.
Well, starting with demand letters,
identities, right? Oops, we dropped the lawsuit, and then we send them letters.
Right.
It's a very different approach. And the RIAA abandoned it partly because they weren't making any money at it, because their approach is not cost effective, as it turns out.
Yeah, well, in Australia, it turns out that a court has given them the right to seek compensation from more than 4,700 downloaders. They were given the right to sue, but not to speculative invoicing, which means that if they were given the identity of these people, they weren't allowed to just kind of send out letters en masse.
Yeah.
And they were also told that they could seek to recover only the cost of the film itself, so very little money, as well as
$20
legal fees, and no extra damages. So, oh, and also they were
rather than legal fees. They did say.
Right. Well, I mean, they're not making any money by getting their legal fees back, so it becomes a business operational. It becomes a bad business idea, especially because they've been asked to post a $600,000 bond before they can receive the names and addresses of the users that downloaded the movie illegally, probably anticipating this speculative invoicing to possibly occur. So they're like, okay, you're going to post up $600,000, and if you end up doing what we don't want you to do, we buy the money.
Now, I've got to say, I'm a little bit unnerved by the no damages thing, because I understand the idea of damages being reasonable. People are like, well, why shouldn't the damages just be the cost of the film? Well, A, because you weren't just downloading and viewing it, you were uploading and sharing it. You were participating in the infringement. But also, if the damages are just the cost of the film, then there's no reason to ever buy the film.
Right, there's zero deterrence value.
There's zero deterrence value. There needs to be some deterrent value, because basically if all I'm ever going to get hit with is the damages for the film, then why not just pirate everything, and the few times I do get dinged, I just pay for what I would pay for the film anyway.
I'm on board with you.
So I get nerved by that, but I understand also that the damages should be reasonable.
I agree, and I'm also a little curious about this ban on, quote, speculative invoicing, because generally a court wants to encourage settlements, and so if they're given the right to sue, why aren't they okay with the right of speculative invoicing?
Yeah, and speculative invoicing has kind of become a touchy subject for a lot of people, because like I said, courts do try to push settlements, but many people feel that these settlements are trying to take advantage of the legal system by offering settlement deals that are cheaper than defending yourself, making it so that even if you are not guilty, it doesn't behoove you to defend yourself.
Right.
And that's the big concern there, is that it's kind of a lopsided settlement arrangement. I mean, it's like I have said before, if I get hit by one of those notices, which I don't know why I would, I mean, if I can't just go, hey, do you know that I'm Jonathan Bailey and you know what I do for a living and all that, that doesn't make it go away, then I pretty much would have to pay it, because there's no way that I could afford, no way it makes sense to defend myself. So that's one of the issues there. But I think the damages should be reasonable, but I also am not comfortable with the no damages thing either. It just doesn't seem quite right within the spirit and the intent of the law.
Well, from questionable judicial policy to effective legislative policy.
Yeah, this is interesting. This next one really fascinates me. We've talked a fair amount on this show about the City of London intellectual property union. City of London, by the way, is not the same thing as London. It's the City of London. It's more like one of the nations of the United Kingdom than it is the City of London. It's bizarre. CGP Grey did a video on it. Go check it out. But they have been very aggressive in dealing with intellectual property. One of the things that they did was they targeted the advertisements that appear on piracy sites within the UK. Specifically, they had created what can be they call the infringing websites list, because creative names be damned. They couldn't, it is what it is.
We wanted to be very clear.
Basically, it had to be identified as a site that is participating in endorsing or encouraging piracy, and then B, not respond to the PIPCU whenever they approached you about your presence on the list. Not basically, stick your fingers in your ears and go away. So sites that were on that list, they turned it over to advertisers in hopes that they would stop, mainstream advertisers, major mainstream advertisers from appearing on it, and it seems to have worked. There's been a 73% decline in the last 2 years in mainstream advertisers on sites that are on this list. So that's a pretty good success.
Yeah, yeah. The top. I'm not sure how they define the top, but the article mentions that the top advertisers, top online advertisers, have been giving 73% less money to these companies.
Yeah.
So it seems to be pretty effective to me. You know, follow the money has been the mantra of most intellectual property owners and industry associations, and
yeah.
You know, we have some pretty good proof of that it works. You know, when you go after and put the onus on these advertisers to at least somewhat police their buys, and also talking to and finding and making a good master list of the infringing sites.
Yeah, and what's interesting about it to me, and what a lot of people say is, well, even the Pirate Bay has ads. You know, they'll still find other advertisers. I'm like, yes, but you have to understand, Russian brides do not pay nearly as much as Gucci. You know?
No, they. I would imagine they do not.
There's a huge difference in the amount of money you can hope to rake in from those two. You know, you're going to get way more from these respected brands, and you're going to be from some random poker site hosted in the Caribbean, you know. So it doesn't kill the revenue stream, but it severely constrains it, and that's one of the things is, you know, mainstream legitimate sites can obtain these licensing deals with Target. They can work with Walmart. They can work with Amazon. They can work with all these big companies, and they can reap the rewards of those benefits. But if you make it so that the pirate sites can't, that's a big hindrance for them and for their attempt to establish themselves and earn revenue from their business.
Absolutely. Well,
we're ending the show today on two very interesting cases.
Yes. One is of a woman, an English. We're staying in England. Mm-hmm. A woman from Leeds who all of a sudden found herself as the star, as the main attraction of a T-shirt.
Can you imagine how weird that would be, finding your face on a random T-shirt, though? I can't even fathom that. And she said it was a friend, but still, you know, it's kind of surreal.
I thought it was a pretty cool picture. You know,
it is.
Sweet sunglasses, cool. Lots of cool colors. I would be a little flattered, but you know, when you are a photographer or an artist, and it's your photograph that's been misappropriated and is being infringed upon through the printing and production of hundreds of T-shirts, yeah, your reaction is a little different.
Yeah. And basically, what she did is, apparently it was at a company, admittedly I know very little about the size and relative, you know, impact of various retail businesses in the UK, but from a company called Shop Direct was selling the T-shirts. They apparently acquired from some random place in England.
From a third party that we don't really know too much about. And I think this is a really good example of copyright protecting somebody who, you know, needs the protection, who deserves the protection. And, you know, especially when you look at how this thing resolved, I think, you know, it's a really good little example of the effective role of copyright. And, you know, we have this woman, she sends a demand letter threatening to sue. And the company's like, hey, whoa, we bought this T-shirt in good faith. We had no idea. You know, here's the money we made from it. Here are the 267 T-shirts that we still have.
I bet that was an awkward shipment to receive. I'm just saying, UPS kind of strolls up.
I have 267 photos of you.
On T-shirts. Sign here, please.
Yes. And so this woman decides that, hey, you know what I'm going to do with this is that I'm going to keep on selling them, and I'm going to give the money to charity.
Yeah.
So
I think that's really cool of her, and a really good approach. And you can buy them on eBay. She sold them on eBay, which I thought was an interesting decision. But regardless, I thought it was a great resolution to this. She doesn't seem to be interested in taking this any further. I don't know how practical it would be, given that they came from India.
Right. The T-shirts came from India, which, if that's exactly where this company got their stuff, you know, I'd be interested to see the communication and how it happened, because whenever you're dealing with, you know, foreign production companies or foreign producers, you should always be a little bit wary of intellectual property, especially when things come from China or India. Yeah. And maybe that sounds bad, but it's just the truth about intellectual property rights.
Well, I would say overseas in general.
Yeah. Yes.
You have to make sure that their actions are going to mesh with both the cultural and legal norms in your country on intellectual property.
Yes. This is what I
would say that's pretty much anywhere.
Our last story is awesome.
Yeah, this is. You hear about these types of stories every once in a while, and I love featuring them because I love the imagination and creativity. The developer Noodle Cake Studios, I love the name, by the way, I have to throw that out too. They've been battling some incredibly high piracy on their Android games. And apparently Android piracy is unfathomably huge. I'm always blown away by the numbers. I've seen them before, but I'm always...
blew me away as well. Apparently, this game that Shooting Stars produced has only been paid for, and 11% of the time it is installed on a device.
Yeah, they know that the tracking software remained intact. They fear some of the pirated copies might have even removed the tracking software. So, but yeah, and basically, the result of that is they decided to take matters into their own hands a little bit.
Yes, they did.
They released a version themselves of Shooting Stars on various BitTorrent and other piracy websites, but it contained an added feature, if you will. It included a special wave of boss characters called Daft Premium, a parody of Daft Punk, and it included a series of enemies that, quote-unquote, had an obscene amount of health, followed by a final boss who could not be killed.
Right, and once this boss killed you, it said, hey, schmuck, go buy the game. We know that this is an illegal copy because we released it ourselves on torrent sites. Yeah, and this is the second best trolling I've ever seen. Obviously, the best all time, which will never be beaten, is the Game Developer Simulator.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
A company who released a pirated version for people to download, and towards the end of the development, where your game is about to be released, if you have the pirated version, you fail, your game fails because it says like, oh no, our game's been pirated, sorry, you fail. And that would happen over and over again. And people would post message boards just like, I'm playing it, I'm 4 hours in, and every single time, my stuff is, does anyone know how to get around this? It was hilarious. And
the one I think that would create the most amount of broken stuff. You familiar with the SNES game Earthbound?
I'm not.
It's an RPG. It's an RPG from that era, and it took like 40-odd hours to complete. It's a huge, massive RPG game. You'd play it, and you would pretty much, I believe, if I remember correctly, you get all the way to the final boss. Then the copy protection kicks in, and then it would erase your game if it detected it was a pirated game. It would crash, and it would erase your game before you could completely finish it.
Oh, they got them. I don't know. The pirates seems to have gotten a lot of value in that situation, no?
Yeah, they do seem to get a lot of value, but man, the inability to complete it after that much work.
I know what you mean.
But still,
diehard gamers like to finish what they've started.
Yeah, and yeah, there have been a lot of great ones. One of my other favorites, though, was, and one that was similar to this, the game Serious Sam 3. When they released it, if you pirated it, there was an unkillable scorpion. The scorpions were like pretty mundane characters for most of the time for the game, but they would program one deliberately to stalk you everywhere and be completely unkillable. And it would follow you into the ends of the earth. So,
it reminds me of when the movie studios just started uploading, and this is towards the end in the death of Napster and Kazaa. They would upload basically like copies that looked really good of a song. Just be like 6 seconds into the song, it would be like "Sweet dreams are made of," it would like kind of like jump at you with like this like high pitched noise. It was awful.
Yeah.
It was effective.
And actually that continued on Groove Shark right before its closure. So that exact approach didn't really go away. It just kept getting
very effective,
more and more effective. But yeah, it's always interesting to find non-legal ways that content creators troll those that would attempt to pirate their work.
Agreed. I think they're sometimes even more effective if you can get it.
Oh, absolutely.
If you find a way to do it really well.
Yeah,
if I would ever produce a game and was worried about piracy, I think what I would do is basically find a way to release like maybe like every so often like super awesome updates that like everyone would want, and like almost with a statement that says like like even if you've pirated the game, it's no problem, and then have it kind of like be after a day or two. So like you'd let the waves come in, and then after a day or two something kicks in that checks to see if you've bought it. Little time delay I thought would maybe be a good strategy.
Mm-hmm. And that way you get like a little demo out of it too.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, if you're a pirate, that's an interesting way to look at it, because if you're a pirate, hey, I got a 2-day demo, and now I can make a decision. But one of the most frustrating things. Are you familiar with the Humble Bundle?
No.
It's really, if you're a gamer, it's really, really cool. You should check it out. They do these regularly. It's DRM-free PC games. Name your own price. Most of the money goes to charity.
Mm-hmm.
You actually determine how much goes to charity and how much goes to developers. It's really, really cool. And sometimes some of the bundles are really, really interesting. But I wrote a while back on Plagiarism Today about how a large percentage of the downloads of Humble Bundle are pirated.
Really?
Don't bother to pay the 1 cent required to secure a Humble Bundle legitimately.
It's ridiculous.
It is, and that's just kind of that's the moment you realize that you can never completely crush piracy. It's some people will always try to find ways to cheat the system, no matter how.
I never really put much faith in the pay what you can afford system. Like,
there's a reason Radiohead only did it once. I'm just saying. Yeah,
I agree. People will take things for free when they have the chance, and only very few people will pay for you. And those people were probably buying your stuff anyways. That's the most.
Yeah, there you go. Well, anything else? Any other final thoughts on copyright? I know you got a shindig you're all dressed up for.
Nothing. Well, I've got a quick happy hour local networking event, and then I'm off to live band karaoke. So, any suggestions for what I should go with tonight?
Oh, geez, I don't know. What type of music do they normally play at this?
They've got a pretty broad repertoire. It's a live band, and they do great karaoke. I was thinking maybe I was going to do a Foo Fighters song tonight.
Yeah, I've heard your cover of Everlong. I love that.
Maybe I'll do that one tonight.
I love Everlong. You do it. You're one of the few people that's one of those songs that gets eternally covered and eternally ruined.
Yeah.
It's like I Love Rock and Roll by Joan Jett in that regard. Eternally covered, eternally ruined. Or anything by Queen.
Yeah, no one can cover
Queen. It's physically impossible to cover Queen.
Impossible.
And not look like a jerk. It just doesn't work. But yeah, so no, but I would personally, I'm always fond of anything from that the 80s rock era, like Joan Jett. The other Joan Jett songs can be covered pretty safely, but I know as a male vocalist that might be a little more funny.
I don't think I've ever really properly done a song that's.
You should cover Bon Jovi.
Good idea.
Bon Jovi. We just talked. We've come full circle in the podcast. Bon Jovi. It's a sign from the heavens. You have to do Bon Jovi now.
All right. Well, then, I guess that wraps it up.
I just remembered, on that note, everyone, my name is Jonathan Bailey. I'm from the website Plagiarism Today, which can be found at plagiarismtoday.com, and I am username Plagiarism Today pretty much everywhere you care to look for me.
And my name is Evan Sherris. You can find me on Twitter at Evan Sherris.
EvanShares.
No.
I screwed it up. I'm like, don't say the A, don't say the A. ERES. Oh my God, have you ever done that? It's like, don't say the A, don't say it. Oh no.
That's too funny.
Oh my God, it's like don't laugh. It's impossible.
Don't laugh. All right, well, John, I've got to run, and
enjoy your event and enjoy your karaoke. I'll talk to you soon, and we will see you guys next week.